In a city where power and prestige are often measured by respect and position, an unexpected event changed everything. A black man, a major general of the army, with an illustrious career and undeniable pride, suddenly became a victim of racism right at the door of an important conference. The story of the insult and the journey to make amends is not only a lesson in justice, but also a reminder of change, forgiveness, and the power of patience. If you like this content, don't forget to share this story with your friends and family, and especially subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next meaningful stories. The clear blue skies of Riverdale give no hint of the tensions simmering beneath the surface, but for Major General Nathaniel Carter, today is simply another day on a long journey. He is a man whose every step carries the weight of pride and duty. At 55, with silver-streaked hair and deep, experienced eyes, Nathaniel is the living embodiment of the discipline and loyalty the military has honed in him for more than 3 decades. Born and raised in a poor neighborhood in the South, Nathaniel struggled not only on the battlefield, but also in everyday life. As the youngest of 7 children, he knew what it meant to strive to rise above adversity. His military career began as a small dream, a way out of poverty, but became a lifelong goal as he learned the power of discipline, faith, and patriotism. Nathaniel has been involved in many dangerous missions, from the fierce battlefields of the Middle East to peace missions in Africa. He has always stood out for his leadership, calmness in the face of challenges, and loyalty to his teammates. The medals on his chest are not only a symbol of honor, but also a reminder of the sacrifices of the soldiers who fell beside him. Now, after leaving the battlefield, Nathaniel continues to serve his country in a different way. He was hired by Mayor James Whitmore, an old friend from the military, to be the security advisor for the city of Riverdale. The two had gone through difficult times together at the military academy, where they built a friendship based on absolute trust. In Whitmore's eyes, Nathaniel was the only person he could trust to keep the city safe in an increasingly complex security situation. That morning, Nathaniel stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the tie on his white shirt collar. He had chosen his most formal uniform with its glittering badges and medals, and was preparing for an important security meeting at Riverdale City Hall. This is more than just a meeting, he thought. This is my chance to contribute to building a better community. Nathaniel stepped out of his modest mansion, where family photos and military memorabilia hung on the walls. A luxury car was waiting outside, and his personal bodyguard, Caleb, a young veteran, loyal and ready to serve, opened the door for him with a respectful smile. "Are you ready, General?" Caleb asked, his eyes sparkling with admiration. Nathaniel nodded, his eyes shining with determination. "Today isn't just about me. It's about what we can do to keep this community safe." All the way to the town hall, Caleb kept reminding him of what Nathaniel had been in the press lately, how he was not just a tough soldier, but a symbol of humility and integrity. But Nathaniel just smiled softly, looking out the window at the bustling city streets. "All that praise means nothing if we don't actually do something for the people," he said, his voice calm but powerful. As the car pulled up in front of the town hall, Nathaniel felt a familiar tinge of nervousness, not because of the conference, but because of the responsibility that awaited him inside. He stepped out of the car, his uniform shining in the morning sun, attracting the attention of passers-by. But in the blink of an eye, an unexpected incident occurred. From above, a pigeon suddenly swooped down, leaving an unwelcome mark on his shoulder and a foul smell. Nathaniel paused for a moment, then burst out laughing. "Caleb, I think this is going to be an interesting day." He took off his uniform, handed it to Caleb, and put on the civilian clothes he had prepared. Despite the unexpected situation, Nathaniel did not let it dampen his confidence. "Don't worry, we'll still be on time. And this uniform, clean it, I need it this afternoon." Inside Riverdale City Hall, the solemn atmosphere of the city's safety conference contrasted sharply with the chaos that was about to unfold in the main hall. Nathaniel Carter, dressed in a neat but understated civilian outfit, entered the building with his usual composure. Little did he know that his visit would bring him into a bitter confrontation with a representative of the prejudices he had fought all his life. As Nathaniel walked through the door, The cold eyes of Ethan Cooper, a young police officer in his 30s, were fixed on him. Ethan, tall, with sunglasses and a shiny police badge on his chest, carried a distinctly arrogant demeanor. Ethan had long harbored racist beliefs, looking down on people who were not his color. When he saw Nathaniel, a black man, enter the building without a uniform or formal attire, Ethan immediately decided that this was someone who should not be there. "Hey, you!" Ethan shouted, his voice as sharp as a knife. "What are you doing here? This is a security conference area, not a place just anyone can enter." Nathaniel stopped and turned to face Ethan. His face was still calm. "Hello," he said, his voice soft but confident. "I am Major General Nathaniel Carter. I am here to attend a security conference at the invitation of Mayor James Whitmore." Ethan raised an eyebrow, looking Nathaniel up and down as if assessing every detail of him. "General, don't joke with me, old man. Do you think I'm stupid? You look more like a tramp than a military officer." The words were not only insulting, but also filled with sarcasm. But Nathaniel was unmoved. He had faced much more difficult situations, from fierce battlefields to tense negotiations. He looked Ethan straight in the eye, keeping his voice even. "I understand that you are responsible for security here, but I assure you that I have access. If you don't believe me, call Mayor Whitmore to confirm." Ethan laughed a sneer. "You think I'm going to call the mayor just because some guy calls himself a brigadier general? Let me guess. You still want me to walk you down the red carpet?" A few passers-by had begun to notice the conversation between the two, but Ethan paid no attention. He walked closer to Nathaniel, standing right in front of the door like an impenetrable wall. "Listen, old man," Ethan said, his voice low and menacing. "This is City Hall, not a place just anyone can walk into. You're not in uniform. You have no identification, and I don't trust a word you say. If you don't want trouble, you better get out of here before I call in more men." Nathaniel took a deep breath. He knew the situation could escalate quickly if he wasn't careful. But at the same time, he was outraged by the officer's rude and discriminatory attitude. He kept his composure, but his voice became sterner. "Mr. Ethan, I'll say it one last time. I'm Major Nathaniel Carter here for an important meeting. Not only are you insulting me, you're interrupting important business for this city." Ethan didn't care. He crossed his arms and smirked. "Sounds good, General, but I'm not buying your story. You probably think I'll let you in with a few nice words. Let me teach you a lesson. I decide who gets in here and who doesn't." Ethan's last words brought the tension to a boiling point. Nathaniel felt anger rising inside him, but he knew losing his temper would only make things worse. He looked straight at Ethan, his eyes as cold as knives. "Ethan, your actions could cost you your job," Nathaniel said, his voice low but authoritative. "I've seen many people like you in my life, people who let prejudice and arrogance guide them, but I promise you, every action has consequences." Nathaniel, words added fuel to the fire. Ethan was furious, stepping closer until they were only a few feet apart. "Losing your job? Who do you think you are to threaten me? I'm a cop. I have the right to take action against anyone I deem suspicious. And you're suspicious." Ethan suddenly pulled a gun from his waist holster and pointed it at Nathaniel. The people standing nearby gasped. Some backed away, afraid that the situation would become dangerous. But Nathaniel, with the experience and calmness of a soldier who had faced death, did not waver. He raised his hand slowly, his voice still calm. "Mr. Ethan, I advise you to put your gun down immediately. This is not how a police officer acts. You are making a big mistake." Ethan Cooper stood there, gun still clutched in his hand, his eyes challenging Nathaniel. Though Nathaniel maintained his composure, his warning didn't seem to reach Ethan. Complacency, prejudice, and arrogance clouded the young cop's perception. "Come on, old man," Ethan smirked, his mockery clear. "Major General Nathaniel Carter? Are you kidding? If you were a major general, I'd be the President of the United States. It's funny how people like you always try to create a fictional story to get attention." Ethan's words were not only full of sarcasm, but also a deep insult to Nathaniel's honor. But Nathaniel, with the experience of a soldier who had faced countless harsh challenges, remained calm. He did not let his emotions overwhelm his reason, even though his pride was being trampled on in public. "Ethan," Nathaniel replied, his voice deeper and sharper, "this is no joke. I served in the military for over 30 years, defending the values this country holds dear. And I am trying to remind you that as a police officer, you are responsible for protecting, not humiliating, citizens." Ethan laughed, crossing his arms over his chest, the gun swinging as if the action were of no consequence. "You hear yourself? That sounds good, but I'm not fooled. I see people like you all the time, talking big, but really just being social parasites. You might fool others, but not me." Ethan laughed, crossing his arms over his chest, the gun swinging as if the action were of no consequence. "You hear yourself? That sounds good, but I'm not fooled. I see people like you all the time, talking big, but really just being social parasites. You might fool others, but not me." A few passers-by stopped, curiously watching the argument. A few apprehensive glances were directed at the gun in Ethan's hand, but no one dared to intervene. Ethan, completely unaware of the situation spiraling out of control, continued his taunt. "Honestly, old man, if you were a major general, you wouldn't be standing here wearing this cheap suit and without a single badge. I don't know what you think you're doing, but I suggest you get lost before I have to arrest you for harassment." Nathaniel frowned slightly, but he said nothing more. Instead, he just looked at Ethan silently, his eyes assessing the man before him. Ethan didn't realize that Nathaniel's silence wasn't out of fear, but the restraint of someone who knew the consequences of rash actions. "What are you looking at me for?" Ethan snapped, his eyes flashing with annoyance. "I made it clear. This is your last chance. If you don't leave, I'll have to resort to drastic measures." Ethan smiled again, as if confident that he was doing the right thing. But he didn't know that every word he said, every action he took, was dragging him deeper into an irreversible mistake. Nathaniel looked Ethan straight in the eye, his expression devoid of any hesitation. He slowly reached into his pocket, not wanting the young cop to think he was doing anything suspicious. With the calmness honed over years in the military, Nathaniel pulled out his phone and dialed the mayor's number. Ethan frowned, smirking. "Oh, who are you calling now? The rescue squad? Or your neighborhood chess buddy?" Nathaniel ignored the sarcasm. When the other end picked up, his voice was calm but serious. "James, this is Nathaniel," he said, his voice low and firm. "I'm standing in front of the town hall, but there's a problem." On the other end of the line, Mayor James Carter's voice was friendly but concerned. "Nathaniel, what's wrong? Are you okay?" Nathaniel took a deep breath, his eyes never leaving Ethan, who was now standing there with his arms crossed as if this was purely for entertainment. "I was just pulled over by a cop. He didn't believe me and was insulting me, even pulling out a gun. I'm still here, but I think you should come see what's going on." James was silent for a second, and when he spoke his usual calm had given way to anger. "What do you mean? A cop pulled a gun on you? Jesus Christ, Nathaniel. I'll be right there. Wait for me there." Nathaniel hung up and put the phone back in his pocket. He stood still, his hands at his sides, his eyes fixed on Ethan. "The mayor will be here shortly. I suggest you prepare a good explanation for your actions." Ethan laughed, but this time it didn't sound as natural as before. He glanced around, noticing that more people had stopped to watch. Some had taken out their phones to record videos, which made him a little embarrassed. However, pride and prejudice kept Ethan from backing down. "The mayor," Ethan said, his voice full of doubt. "Don't tell me you know the mayor. Come on, old man. These stories don't impress me." Nathaniel didn't answer. Instead, he just stood there, silent as a mountain. His calm demeanor made Ethan feel uneasy, like he was losing control of the situation. But instead of realizing his mistake, Ethan stepped closer, gun still in hand. "Look," Ethan said, trying to keep his cool, but his voice was starting to betray some of the nervousness. "You don't understand the situation here. I'm the one who gets to decide who gets in here and who doesn't. And you, obviously, don't get to step foot in here." Nathaniel remained silent, his steady gaze making Ethan even more uneasy. But before the young cop could say anything else, the large glass doors of the building swung open, and Mayor James Carter strode out, his face full of anger. He was dressed in a neat dark suit, but his demeanor was far from his usual calm. His eyes swept over Nathaniel, seeing that he was safe, then stopped at Ethan, who stood there, gun in hand, as if he had just apprehended a dangerous suspect. "Ethan Cooper." James' voice rang out like thunder, startling everyone around him. Ethan turned around, clearly not expecting the mayor to appear so quickly. He took a step back, his eyes wavering between surprise and confusion. "Sir, I'm just doing my job." Ethan tried to keep his voice calm, but the tremble in his words betrayed the unease within. "On duty," James barked, taking a step forward, making Ethan freeze. "You think pointing a gun at an unarmed citizen is on duty? Do you know what you just did?" Ethan's mouth fell open, but he had no time to reply. James continued, his voice low but full of steel. "The man you're threatening, the man you've just insulted, is Major General Nathaniel Carter, a man who has dedicated more than 30 years to the United States military, protecting this country, and the reason you can wear this uniform without fear." The mayor's words were like a slap to Ethan. His face paled and the gun in his hand dropped reflexively. He stammered, trying to find an excuse. "Sir, I don't know. He doesn't have papers." "No papers," James interrupted, the anger in his voice choking off any excuses. "So you think that gives you the right to curse, taunt, and pull a gun on him? Do you know what would happen if he lost his temper? If you shot him by mistake?" Ethan took another step back, sweat starting to form on his forehead. The people around him were now filming and taking pictures of the whole thing. The air around him seemed heavier, and Ethan felt like the whole world was staring at him. James turned to Nathaniel, his expression softening, but the remorse evident. "Nathaniel, I cannot express how ashamed and disappointed I am for what happened. I apologize from the bottom of my heart. No one, especially someone like you, deserves to go through this." Nathaniel nodded slightly, his eyes still calm. "James, I don't blame you, but this police officer's actions not only insult me personally, but also go against every value we strive to build in this city." James turned back to Ethan, his eyes cold as steel. "Ethan Cooper, you are suspended immediately. Turn in your gun and badge right now." Ethan's eyes widened, not believing what he had just heard. "Sir, I was just following the rules. I didn't mean to. Not on purpose." James gritted his teeth, stepping straight in front of Ethan. "You pull a gun on a citizen for no good reason, and you dare say you didn't mean it. You think an excuse like that will save you?" Ethan hesitated, but James's steely gaze made it impossible for him to resist. He quietly removed his gun from its holster, handed it to the mayor, then took off his badge and placed it in his hand. It was an act of complete submission, but it was also the end of Ethan's police career. James took the items and turned to another officer standing nearby. "Take him inside and get him suspended immediately. I will personally oversee the process." Ethan was led away, his face pale and his steps unsteady. The crowd began to murmur, some turning to Nathaniel with admiration, others with contempt for Ethan. Once Ethan was out of sight, James turned back to Nathaniel. "I promise you, Nathaniel, we will thoroughly investigate and make sure this never happens again. I will personally apologize to you in front of the entire conference." Nathaniel placed his hand on James' shoulder, his eyes full of understanding. "James, I believe you. But remember, our every action reflects the values we stand for. Don't let anyone destroy that." James nodded, his eyes filled with determination. "You're right. Thanks for staying calm and not letting this get any worse." Nathaniel smiled slightly, his expression calm but not without the weariness of the confrontation. He looked at the building where the conference awaited his arrival. "We should go in. I think it's time to remind everyone why we're here." James nodded and walked away with Nathaniel, leaving behind a costly lesson for Ethan Cooper and anyone else who dared to disregard the dignity of a human being. The next morning, the atmosphere in the Metropolitan Police Department was heavier than ever. The usual chatter between officers had been replaced by furtive glances and hushed whispers. Everyone knew what had happened to Ethan Cooper the day before. The story had spread like wildfire on social media. The video of Ethan pointing a gun at Major Nathaniel Carter had been viewed millions of times overnight, making him a subject of widespread condemnation. The large conference room at the police station, where morning briefings are usually held, was packed. Chief Olivia Monroe, a 50-year-old white woman with a reputation for being stern and even-tempered, entered the room with a serious expression on her face. She wore a neat police uniform, her hair pulled back in a bun, and her eyes had the coldness that comes with tense situations. Olivia stepped to the podium, her gaze sweeping the room. The murmurs died down, replaced by a heavy silence. Those present sensed that what was to come would not be pleasant. "Officers," Olivia began, her voice deep and firm, echoing throughout the room. "Yesterday, a serious incident occurred right in front of City Hall. One of our officers, Ethan Cooper, acted in an unacceptable manner, dishonoring this uniform and going against every value we pledged to protect." She paused, letting her words sink in. Some officers bowed their heads. Others looked at Olivia with worried expressions. No one dared to breathe. Ethan Cooper's behavior, insulting, mocking, and threatening a respected citizen and a major general of the United States Army, is not only a serious violation of the service's code of conduct, but also a disgrace to the entire force, and I will not tolerate any such actions. Olivia looked down at a piece of paper in front of her, then looked up, her voice cold and decisive. "I hereby announce Ethan Cooper has been dismissed from the police force, effective immediately." The entire room held its breath. Although many people had already predicted this decision, hearing those words from Olivia's mouth still made them feel shocked. Some people glanced at each other. Some had shocked expressions on their faces, but no one dared to voice any objections. "This decision is not just about Ethan Cooper's behavior yesterday," Olivia continued, her eyes as sharp as knives. "It is also a reminder to all of us. The badge on your chest and the gun on your hip are not symbols of absolute power. They are symbols of responsibility, a responsibility to protect and serve all citizens regardless of color, class, or social status." A few sighs echoed in the room, as if Olivia's words had struck a chord with many people. A young officer sitting in the front row shook his head slightly, while another, a middle-aged man, nodded in agreement. "We cannot allow a few individuals to destroy the reputation this force has built over the years," Olivia continued, her voice growing stronger. "If any of you feel you cannot carry out that responsibility with respect and integrity, then step aside now. I will not stop you." No one moved. Everyone was silent, but the silence was not necessarily unanimous. Some faces showed concern, especially those who had worked closely with Ethan. They knew that Ethan's actions were not only affecting him, but the entire police department. Olivia placed her hands on the podium, her eyes softening slightly. "I know some of you may feel sorry for Ethan, but remember this is his doing. We cannot tolerate discrimination, injustice, or abuse of power. Each of us must be held accountable for our actions." She paused for a moment, letting her final words sink in. Then she concluded, "Let's learn from this and prove to the community that we are worthy of their trust." Olivia stepped from the podium and walked out of the conference room with her usual dignity. Behind her, the room remained silent. The officers began to whisper among themselves after a few minutes, but no one dared to speak out loud. Ethan Cooper's name would be remembered as a classic example of the consequences of thoughtlessness and abuse of power. Ethan Cooper sat back in his small apartment staring at his phone. His voicemail was filled with messages from friends, former colleagues, and strangers since the video went viral. Ethan felt like the world was against him. He looked at the old police badge he had pocketed last night, feeling like a part of his life had been ripped away. The words of the mayor and the chief of police echoed in his head, emphasizing that a career he had once been proud of had ended in disgrace. He knew that no matter how he justified it, his mistake could not be corrected. A video of Ethan Cooper blocking Major General Nathaniel Carter's path and pointing a gun at him has been circulating on social media platforms. The person who filmed the video, a nearby building employee, uploaded it with the caption, "Racist police point guns at Army Major General. It's time we put an end to this." The video quickly garnered millions of views, trending overnight. Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram were flooded with posts expressing outrage at Ethan's actions, while praising Nathaniel's calmness and dignity in such a tense situation. One prominent comment widely shared on Twitter read, "Ethan Cooper didn't just insult a black man. He insulted an Army Major General who has spent his life defending this country. Shame on the police force." The online community was not just outraged, but also took action. Anti-racism organizations like Black Lives Matter and the NAACP quickly jumped in, strongly condemning Ethan's actions and calling for police reform. An NAACP spokesperson said in a press conference, "This incident is not just an individual act of a police officer, but a painful reminder that systemic racism remains deeply entrenched. We call on our leaders, law enforcement agencies, and society as a whole to take immediate action to prevent similar incidents from happening again." Small protests have begun outside the police station. People are carrying banners with messages like "Don't shoot at the difference." Nathaniel is a hero. Ethan is a disgrace. There is no room for discrimination in policing. Television discussions have also taken up the issue. On CNN, a public policy expert commented, "When a police officer disrespects an Army Brigadier General, it's not personal. It's a manifestation of a system of bias that needs to be broken." The military community has not been left out. The Veterans Administration issued a statement expressing support for Nathaniel and condemning Ethan Cooper. In a nationally televised address, one former officer said, "Major General Nathaniel Carter was more than just a soldier. He was a symbol of honor and sacrifice. It is heartbreaking to see him disrespected by the very people who were supposed to protect him and every other citizen." Many current and former military personnel have shared their stories about Nathaniel, describing his dedication and leadership. One veteran's LinkedIn post received thousands of likes. "I served under Major General Nathaniel. Not only was he an outstanding leader, but he was also a humble, kind human being. He did not deserve to be treated this way." While the public was in an uproar, Nathaniel Carter remained silent. He declined media requests for interviews, instead focusing on completing his duties at the security conference. However, his spokesperson shared a brief message on Twitter. Major General Nathaniel Carter thanks everyone for their support. He hopes this incident serves as an important reminder that we must continue to fight for fairness and equality in our society. The post received great support from the online community with tens of thousands of likes and comments expressing respect for Nathaniel. The mayor, after suspending Ethan on the spot, held a public press conference the following day. He stressed, "We have no tolerance for any form of racism, especially in law enforcement. I pledge to work with Police Chief Olivia Monroe to ensure that these types of incidents do not occur in the future." He also announced mandatory diversity and anti-racism training for the entire city police force. Ethan Cooper not only lost his job, but also faced ostracism from his community and family. His image appeared everywhere on social media, accompanied by harsh criticism. One neighbor shared with the press, "I used to think Ethan was a nice guy, but after what he did, I can't look at him the same way anymore." Ethan also received countless calls and messages from strangers, most of them criticizing or threatening. Some old friends tried to comfort him, but Ethan himself knew that his reputation was completely ruined. In a brief television interview, Ethan admitted, "I made a big mistake. I cannot justify my actions. Now I can only hope to be given the chance to make things right." However, public opinion is not so forgiving. For the community, Ethan's story is not just about an individual, but a manifestation of a deeper problem that society needs to address. A week after the shocking incident, Major General Nathaniel Carter finally agreed to a live interview on national television. The studio was packed, not only because Nathaniel was a big shot, but also because the event had captured national attention. The celebrity host, Vanessa Sinclair, opened the interview with a respectful greeting. "Today, We are honored to speak with a true hero, Major General Nathaniel Carter, who not only devoted his life to protecting our country, but has become a symbol of pride, humility, and justice in these days. Thank you for taking the time to be with us. Nathaniel sat up straight, his gaze confident but calm. He wore a neatly pressed uniform, medals glinting on his chest, as if to remind the audience that this was no ordinary man, but a man who had devoted his life to his country. Thank you, Vanessa, and thank you to everyone who has reached out to me. I'm not here today to criticize anyone or bring up hurt feelings. I'm here to send an important message about fairness, dignity, and how we treat each other. Vanessa asked, "Sir, can you share your feelings about being treated like that, especially by a police officer, someone who is supposed to protect citizens?" Nathaniel paused before replying. It was a difficult moment, not because I was personally offended, but because I realized that discrimination and disrespect still exist deeply in our society. As I stood there facing ridicule and insults, I thought not only of myself, but also of the millions of others, those who have no voice, those who have no title or rank to protect them. He paused, looking straight into the camera. Honor is not about the rank or the uniform I wear. Honor is about how we treat others, no matter who they are, where they come from, or what they look like. I will not allow anyone to take away my dignity, and I do not want anyone to suffer the same. Vanessa continued, "You handled the situation with incredible calmness and patience. What helped you stay calm in such a stressful situation?" Nathaniel smiled gently, his voice deep. "Humility is the first lesson I learned from my parents and the most important lesson throughout my military career. I believe that true power does not come from imposition or violence, but from the ability to stay calm and control emotions. The strongest person is not the one who shouts the loudest, but the one who listens and solves problems with reason." He added, "I don't deny that I was angry, but anger is never the solution. What we need to do in those moments is to remind ourselves that each of our actions can affect others, society. I choose to deal with it with patience because I know that calmness will overcome injustice." After his personal sharing, Nathaniel moved on to a broader message aimed at society as a whole. We live in a country that has achieved so much, but sadly there are still people who are treated unfairly because of the color of their skin, their age, or their background. It's not just an individual problem, it's a community problem, he stressed. Everyone deserves to be treated with respect, no matter who they are or what they do. A society is only truly strong when everyone in it feels safe, respected, and has equal opportunity to develop. Nathaniel also called on leaders and law enforcement agencies. As a former leader, I know clearly that responsibility lies not only with those who carry out the tasks, but also with those who set the standards and values for their organizations. We need better training programs, stricter policies to ensure that no one is treated unfairly at the hands of those in power. The interview ended with Nathaniel's inspiring words, "We can't change the past, but we can shape the future. Let's teach our children kindness, support the vulnerable, and stand up to injustice when we see it." I hope my story serves as a reminder that we have work to do, but also a motivation to keep moving forward. The studio was silent for a few seconds before it erupted into applause. Vanessa concluded, "Thank you, Major General Nathaniel Carter, for your courage and the lessons you have shared. Hopefully, your story will inspire us to build a better society." After the interview, the video recording of Nathaniel, words quickly became the center of attention on social media. Millions of people shared and commented, calling him a symbol of justice and patience. Nathaniel not only defended his honor, but also created an important turning point in the fight against discrimination. The incident involving Maggie Nathaniel Carter and Officer Ethan Cooper not only sent shockwaves through the community, but also highlighted deeper issues within the city's police force. After Ethan was fired, the city's police department decided to undertake a comprehensive retraining campaign to improve its skills and eliminate racist attitudes, something many in the community had been waiting for. From the very beginning of the campaign, Nathaniel Carter's involvement was a special event. Not only is he a veteran with many years of experience in the security industry, but he also understands the importance of maintaining discipline and dignity in all situations. The mayor personally invited Nathaniel to be an advisor for this program, hoping that he would bring valuable insight and lessons to the police force. To kick off the campaign, the police department held a general meeting in a large conference room. Hundreds of police officers from various departments across the city gathered there, their faces showing tension and excitement. They were not sure what new things they would learn from such a training program, but after recent events, everyone realized that this was an opportunity for change. Nathaniel was called to the stage by the police chief. Dressed in his uniform, he stepped up to the podium, his eyes sharp and confident as he looked at the hundreds of police officers sitting attentively. The entire conference room fell silent, waiting for him to speak. "Hello, my name is Nathaniel Carter, and I am honored to be here today. To begin, I would like you to think about why you chose this job. You are charged with protecting and serving the public. And this requires not only skill and strength, but also dignity and respect for all people, regardless of who they are." Nathaniel, words made the atmosphere in the room become serious. He continued, "In reality, respect and fairness are not just theories, but must be demonstrated in every action. A police officer is not only faced with crime, but also with the moral decisions he makes every day. And in those decisions, racism, whether intentional or unintentional, cannot exist." Throughout the training program, Nathaniel shares stories from his own military career, where he faced complex situations that required decisiveness and fairness. He tells of times when he faced challenges where, whether they were enemies or comrades, he had to respect human dignity. In the military, we don't differentiate between black and white or yellow. We fight as a team, and a team is only as strong as the individual in it feels respected. That's the most important lesson I've learned in my entire life. Put yourself in someone else's shoes. Put yourself in the shoes of people you may not understand. People who are treated unfairly. People who are looked down upon just because they are. Nathaniel not only teaches officers theory, but also provides real-life scenarios that they may encounter in their daily work. He discusses typical situations, such as how to handle provocation, or when dealing with negative and racist individuals. I'm not saying you can't encounter people who are intentionally offensive or who are discriminatory, but you have a choice. You can choose to act on your instincts and respond with anger, but you can also choose another way, a way that makes the people around you feel that justice and respect are more important than anything else. One of the most important parts of the training focuses on how to recognize and respond to racism. Nathaniel teaches officers to be aware of the signs of racism in their actions and language, even if it is unintentional or subconscious. Racism isn't always an obvious act, like insults or acts of violence. Sometimes it's more subtle, like someone being ignored, undervalued, or not treated fairly. It's these small acts that can create discrimination in a community. You may not realize it, but when you act in these ways, you're contributing to racism. He then teaches officers how to handle situations where they might face racism from members of the public or fellow officers. He encourages them to stay calm, listen, and not react hastily. When you face a difficult situation, remember that you are the only one who can decide how to handle it, and how you handle it will have a huge impact on others. Treat others the way you want to be treated. At the end of the training, participants felt they had learned a lot from Major General Nathaniel Carter. They not only learned how to deal with racism, but also learned how to become better police officers, who always put the rights and dignity of the people above all else. A young officer who has experienced difficult moments in his career shares his feelings. "I didn't realize that sometimes I myself can be inadvertently biased. Today I learned that recognizing mistakes is the first step to change. Thank you, Major General Nathaniel." Nathaniel just smiled, nodded, and said, "Remember, every day is an opportunity to do better. Fairness and respect are not easy, but they are worth fighting for and defending." Finally, the training program ends with an open discussion where officers can ask questions and discuss with Nathaniel. The City Police Department hopes that this campaign will not only change attitudes within the police force, but also bring positive changes throughout the community, where everyone feels protected and respected. After being fired from the Metropolitan Police Department, Ethan Cooper's life was turned upside down. The incident with Major General Nathaniel Carter not only destroyed his career, but also sent him into a state of mental crisis. Instead of facing the truth and taking responsibility for his actions, Ethan avoided conversations about his mistakes, living in isolation and regret. But the truth always has a way of making people face it, and Ethan realized that in order to save his life, he had to change. One day, while he was sitting alone in his empty room, a notice on social media caught his attention. It was a training program for racists and those who want to start over, organized by a social group with the goal of improving society and helping those who have made mistakes. Ethan has no choice but to join. He knows that this is his only chance to start over, to not only erase the scars of his past, but to find forgiveness and real change within himself. When Ethan entered the organization, he felt strange and a little nervous. He was one of the new guys who had just experienced a major setback in their lives and didn't know if they could change. The organization wasn't an easy place. It was a community of people who had made mistakes in the past, who had done wrong and were now trying to start over. Ethan's first meeting with the group was a conversation about change and facing mistakes. The leader of the group, a woman named Margaret Dawson, was a former police officer and the founder of the group. Margaret shared that, like many in the group, she had a history of bad decisions. She had been racist at times and had a long journey to change. Change doesn't come overnight, and it's not an easy path, Margaret says, but if you really want to change, you have to be brave enough to face your mistakes and start with small steps. Ethan listened to Margaret's every word, feeling a strong sense of empathy. He realized that what she said was not just theory, but practical lessons about how to truly live and respect others. During the following sessions, Ethan was taught how to identify and process racist thoughts and how to change his views and actions to become a better person. Members of the organization were asked to engage in open discussions, sharing about their past, the mistakes they made, and how they have changed. Ethan begins to realize that racism is not just a personal issue, but a deep-rooted social system that is ingrained in the way people treat each other. He once thought his actions were harmless jokes, but now he understands that his words and actions can be deeply hurtful to others. Over the next few months, Ethan not only attended training sessions, but also actively participated in community activities organized by the organization. One of the activities he participated in was a Listen and Understand program, in which group members had to meet with people they had offended or had prejudice against and listen to their stories. One afternoon, Ethan met a man named David, a former soldier who had been insulted by him during an incident when they worked together. Ethan recalled that he had been rude and mocking towards David, simply because he was from a different community. "I'm really sorry for what I did," Ethan said, sitting across from David. "I didn't realize my words could hurt you." David looked at Ethan for a moment, then slowly spoke. "I've been treated that way by a lot of people, Ethan, but I don't let that destroy me. I hope you understand that we can change, and I really appreciate you coming here today to apologize." The conversation with David was a turning point in Ethan's journey of change. He realized that admitting his mistakes was not only the first step, but also the key to truly changing and rebuilding his life. Over the next few months, Ethan became more confident in confronting his past. He began to participate in community programs, helping groups of children and young people learn about the values of fairness and respect. He even began speaking at schools and community organizations to share his story and help others understand that change is possible. One day during a talk at a high school, Ethan shared his journey with the students. "I made mistakes and I paid the price for them, but I don't let my past define my future. Everyone can change. The important thing is to have the courage to admit your mistakes and learn from them." Ethan's words resonated not only with his students, but also with himself. He realized that, although he had lost everything, finding justice and respect within himself was a journey worth more than anything else. Through his active involvement and commitment to change, Ethan has gradually become a role model for those who want to overcome the past and build a better future. Thank you for taking the time to listen to the whole story. If you like this content, don't forget to click like, share this story with friends and family, and especially subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next meaningful stories.